Hi, good evening, Town of Ramses council members. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving holiday break. Hope everyone had a great time with family and friends. Really appreciate your willingness to meet to go over this proposed budget. As you all know, my predecessor didn't allow us a lot of time to get this finalized, so I do appreciate you giving me the opportunity to put this in front of you on a holiday. Um, you should have received a copy of the proposed budget that I prepared for your consideration. And over the next 10 or 15 minutes, I want to provide you with an explanation and a breakdown of the proposed budget. So if you will, please open up the budget document that I sent over to you. This should include a clean copy with a breakdown of the numbers, as well as a copy of the previous year's budget. I'd like to start this discussion by talking about some new expenditures and introducing some new expenditures to you. The proposed balanced budget for the next fiscal year is $4,373,000 and $514. The difference between the previous year's budget and the proposed budget is an increase of 8.98%, or $360,569 from the previous year's budget. The increase in the budget is due to several important expenditures that I know the town council has hoped would come to fruition. This includes a significant increase in the public safety budget due to the addition of another patrol car to each patrol shift. That alone comes out to a price tag of over $250,000. Additionally, this proposal includes another significant expenditure increase, which comes in the form of several new initiatives for the town's Parks and Recreation Department. In keeping with the theme of crime prevention, the Parks and Recreation Department hopes to contribute to this compelling cause by adding increased hours in an after-school program. Both initiatives will increase the Parks and Recreation budget by $77,000. The Parks and Recreation Department will also receive a 10% increase in its budget as compared to the previous year, due to an effort to get that department back to the level it operated at before cuts were administered several years previously. And please note that the 10% increase still has the department operating at a level below the budget that was in place at the time the cuts were made. Council members should also be aware of a new $16,000 expenditure included in the budget proposal due to the increase in the cost of health insurance premiums. While there was a less expensive option on the table, this expenditure will provide a higher level of benefits for municipal employees and will hopefully quell some of the unrest that employees have created since experiencing dissatisfaction with their healthcare coverage. The $16,000 will be shared by the different departments based on their pro rata shares. Next, I would like to talk about a decline in revenues, which I really think is the most significant thing we can talk about today. This significant impact on this town's revenues has come through an economic downturn that we've seen since the creation of the previous budget. As you all know, the total assessed value of taxable property in the town has decreased to a little over $250,000 from the previous assessed value of $332,893. And let me go back to those figures a second. They should read 250,400,000 and 332,893,000. But if you do the math and you look at the mill rate and you divide by 1,000, you get these lower figures, which is what I misquoted. Essentially, this is a 24.78% decrease from one year to the next. And as you can imagine, it creates a significant drop in revenue for the town of Ramses. Looking at the decrease in assessed value only tells half the story, though. To fully comprehend what this means for the town's bottom line, compare those amounts to the actual loss of revenue that can be calculated by using the current millage rate of 0.45 for every $100 of assessed value. The previous year's revenue from property tax collection was $1.5 million almost. And that's the town's primary source of revenue. If you calculate the property tax based on the current millage rate and the decreased value, the revenue for the next fiscal year would be only $1.1 million. It's a loss to the town of about $371,000. Additionally, the news is bad for expected revenues from the collection of sales tax. The sales tax forecast calls for a 2% decrease in expected sales tax for the next fiscal year. That comes out to a loss of $11,234 in revenue just from sales tax collection. As you may also know, the environmental and governmental grants from North Carolina are also expected to decrease for the next fiscal year. An expected 5% decrease in intergovernmental state grant revenue equals a loss of about $16,000 in revenue to our town. So just due to the economic downturn, a loss of revenue from the intergovernmental grants from the state and the decrease in sales tax, the town is facing a loss of revenue of $398,657 compared to last year. If you look at the next section of the budget document, or the proposed document, we're looking at talking about a significant shortfall of revenue to meet the town's needs, not only to remain at their current service levels where we've been, but also to afford to grow and to invest in new expenditures that support our town's employees, the need to combat crime, and the public safety and parks and recreation departments. So how do we balance this budget? Well, this year's budget includes new expenditures and a significant revenue shortfall. So I had to go with two methods used to make this proposed budget overcome these challenges. Not only spending more than we spent last year, but also doing so with less money. And the first way that this proposed budget combats the drop in revenue due to the reduced amount of assessed property value is by raising the millage rate. Our town has not raised the millage rate in 12 years, even though we are granted the authority to do so by the state. In this proposed budget, I propose raising the millage rate from 4.5 to 6 mil. While politically unpopular, this increase is legal, feasible, and reasonable. As the town manager, I do not have the difficult job that y'all have, which is balancing this issue politically with the constituents. I know this is a challenge, and I would not ask you to consider the millage rate increase unless it was if it was absolutely not 100% necessary, in my professional opinion. I understand that the council members have been previously unwilling to consider doing this. However, I remind you that we've never experienced a budget shortfall due to unforeseen and legitimate reasons like this loss of assessed value. This is something we can explain to the public. This loss in assessed value is out of our control. However, not necessarily out of the control of the politicians in Raleigh and Washington that have greater impact on economic impacts. I recommend reminding our citizens of this should you decide to consider this proposed increase. In researching this issue, I realized that even at 6 mil, our property tax rate would still be lower than the tax rate for many other places in North Carolina, including Randolph County and Guilford County, two counties I'm familiar with because I've lived there. And also counties that have similarly sized municipalities comparable to our own town. Excuse me, I'm a little bit tongue twisted. Also, our state gives the town the option to hold a referendum on a tax increase. So if the council is not able to get on board with raising the millage rate through a council vote, we do have the option of letting the voters decide on one. While the second option is unpredictable and will not lead the town to adopting a budget in a timely manner, it is an option for getting the millage rate increased. If you recall, the assessed value decreased from almost 25% from the previous year. That's pretty significant. Lastly, I think of this millage rate increase currently as unavoidable. It's helping us to get to where we're already at. Last year's property tax revenue was like $1.498 million. By increasing the millage rate this year to 6 mil, the revenue gets back to the level where we were already at, and only slightly over at $1.502 million. And I don't have figures or projections for where property tax assessments will be in the future. It'd be great if we did. However, should the assessments get back to where they used to be after we increase the millage rate, we can always go back and reduce the rate. This does not have to be a permanent solution, and we can also share this with the public under the same idea. On the contrary, if the property assessment figures do go back up, the town can also reuse the revenue as it sees fit in any other number of ways. And please keep in mind that with a mill rate of 6, the revenue for property taxes at the previous assessed values would be 1.9, almost $2 million, which is almost $500,000 more than they were last year. While the basic premise behind the increase in the mill rate helps make up for the loss in revenue caused by the change in assessed property values, this proposal required another strategy to help pay for the previously mentioned new revenue items. Okay, we've had to do something else. And the way that this proposed budget overcomes not having enough in the proposed budget fund to make ends meet is by temporarily borrowing $548,000 from the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. It is our goal to have the fund balance to be at least 30% of the general operating fund. Based on this year's needs and the way that this proposed budget has been structured, we will not meet this goal this year if you approve this proposed budget. However, borrowing from the unrestricted fund balance is legal and under the circumstances completely feasible and reasonable. Please note that the law in North Carolina is flexible and liberal for the use of these funds for the general fund's needs. The law is very favorable, and case law shows that the courts have aligned with municipalities over their use of funds from a utility like this. As far as what this looks like politically, I think we must look at the optics. What are we using the money for? What are we purchasing a new patrol car for? For crime. Why are we doing this? Because crime prevention is important to our town and our citizens. We're also increasing the budget for the Parks and Rec Department so they can have longer operating hours, so they can do an after-school program. Again, programs geared toward helping with public safety and crime prevention. We're also adding some of the money that we cut from the Parks and Rec Department previously back to their budget. We had promised to do this, and we're doing it finally. Not completely, but partially. And lastly, we're helping our town employees have better and affordable access to health care. We cannot do the town's work if we do not have the people in their appropriate roles doing their work. I don't think I have to remind the council how difficult and expensive it is to hire and train employees needed to replace the ones we lose. We do not want to lose employees. This is certainly a worthwhile cause, as is everything just listed. And really, I've thought about it, and I don't understand how we would face a lot of blowback for using the money from the water and sewer fund to help make for the government, for the general fund shortfall, especially if we're using the funds for very legitimate purposes. Next, I want to go over municipal buildings and increasing water and sewer rates. We've got 3 municipal buildings that we need to upgrade. Please note that the year's proposed budget does not include an expenditure for this project. However, the project is discussed in the proposal to prepare the town council to act on it next year. The cost for the project is around $450,000. It's a capital improvement, and as such, it's possible to pay for the project by using debt. While our town is traditionally taken from the pay-as-you-go approach, I am proposing we use a loan to pay for it. If the bank would agree to secure the loan using the financed asset, which would be the buildings or their improvements, the deal could be structured through an installment financing agreement. While the terms of any such deal are purely hypothetical at this point, this is a project that could be paid off in several years. Of course, there are costs such as interest and financing. Those such deals through debt can be complicated depending on the type of structure, bonds, installment financing agreements. However, currently in this climate, I think it would be the most feasible to make this project work through financing debt instead of making significant cuts, raising taxes, or increasing water or sewer rates. While all of those are legal options based on the proposal to raise the millage rate and borrow from the water and sewer fund to overcome the shortage of financial resources that the town has, I'm not sure that it would be appropriate timing for increasing water and sewer rates to pay for, even partially pay for the municipal building improvements. Also, as far as cuts are concerned, where would they come from? We have previously cut departmental budgets, and we still have some departments that are still operating with less than they used to have because we never have been able to get to them or get them back to the pre-cut levels. My position on this issue of increased water and sewer rates is based solely on the position that we find ourselves in this year. Next year is another story. If we still find ourselves short, additional revenue from increased water and sewer could be a legitimate way to increase our bottom line. It could increase it by over 100K. While not enough to pay for new municipal buildings in 1 year, in the future, we could raise the rates and earmark the spending for the purpose of paying off the municipal building improvement loan, or earmark some of the funds to replace the funds borrowed from the fund this year. Lastly, I wanted to go over 2 miscellaneous items regarding the need for a part-time employee to help with the tax collection. This expenditure did not make the current proposed budget. We're still communicating with the county about it. The cost of such an employee would not add any considerable expense to our budget. However, we need to work on the details with the county to see how this expense will be shared should it be approved. If we can get this initiative resolved, I can easily adjust the budget accordingly. Potentially, we could borrow several extra $1,000s from the water and sewer fund to pay for the initiative, or based on the person's success, they could potentially pay for the position themselves using the additional monies that they recover. Please note that when I looked this up, I did find that it is unlawful to hire someone to do such work on a contingency. That means we would have to pay the people an hourly rate or a determined salary, and they could not be paid a percentage of the amount that they recover. The proposal we previously discussed regarding donated property to be used as a park or land improvement for purposes of combating crime did not make it into this proposed budget. The cost was $100,000 and the annual operating costs were too significant to make it into this budget proposal. Also, the budget already includes 2 other crime prevention initiatives, including a new patrol car and the after-school programs like we previously mentioned. So looking at the numbers, it would have been possible to do this initiative if we did not add those other initiatives. Looking at the town's needs and significant focus on crime, and adding the patrol car seems to be a lot more reasonable than doing the park option, in my professional opinion. Lastly, we can always speak to our law enforcement about making sure to use the additional patrol car extensively in the blighted area that we would like to turn into this park. In closing, I hope that this proposal makes sense. I hope everyone on the council understands it, and I hope that they understand that it does include things that may be difficult to initially agree with when you look at through political lenses or based on how we have done things in the past. These proposals require your input and your final word. However, before you rule anything out, please consider the arguments I've made supporting these proposals. This proposal works, and due to circumstances beyond our control and the town's needs, the public can and must accept the reasons why these are the appropriate strategies to support this proposed budget. I look forward to speaking with you all at our next meeting, and I look forward to your feedback. If you have any questions or want to give me a call or shoot me an email, that would be great. But I do look forward to hearing that feedback and doing what we can to get this done. So again, thank you for your time, and have a great rest of the holiday weekend. Hope everything went well, and again, really appreciate your time. Thank you.